Welcome to onSodi.com.
We are going to show you a technique called Craig's Special Recipe, which is developed by us at onSodi. This technique allows for infinite adjustments to your photos, and it obtains great results. It can take a little bit of setting up, and we'll show you in the next video how you can make an action so that you can automate this setup and easily apply this technique to future photos. What's so good about this technique is that it provides for you a facility to be able to learn and understand a little bit more about black and white and how black and white sets the luminance quality of your images. We also add mid-range contrast as we discussed in our previous video lesson, and in this exercise we're going to show you how to replace the original color and modify its content to sit in and settle well with your black and white conversion. So we start this particular activity with a color file, and we're going to use this one as an example. The first thing we're going to do is to come over and we are going to add a black and white adjustment layer. Now you'll recall from our adjustments exercises that we have our target adjustment tool up here, and we can click on any of these tones, this being the original blue sky, and we can move these tones around. So the aim of the game here is to start off by trying to get a reasonable looking black and white image. It doesn't have to be perfect because we can come back and readjust this later. So we've done the first stage. Let's now add the next stage, and we're going to add the levels. And in this instance we're going to blend this to overlay mode, similar to what we did in our previous video lesson, and I'm going to bring the opacity down to about 50%. And same as what we did in our earlier lesson, I'm just going to knock back some of the shadow and some of the highlight content so that this mid-range boost is only happening in the midtones and is not really affecting the deep dark shadows. The next stage here is one that can be a little bit tricky. We'll come down to our background layer, click on it to make sure it's active, right click, or we could use the flyout menu from up here, and we want to duplicate this layer. And I'm going to call this one color. Of course, we could always rename this later, and we'll click OK. And this has now added a second layer as color. But we need to put this on top of the layer stack. So we're now going to click and hold and drag that layer up, and you can see those little separation lines between the layers, and when that separation line is above the top layer, release, and this layer is now on top. And you might be thinking, hey, nothing's changed. But let's now change the blend mode of this top layer to color. So now only the color content of this top layer is coming through. Now this is where things get interesting, because we can come back to any of these adjustment layers and we can adjust this file further. I'll come back to the black and white layer and I'll click on the icon here, and you might find your icon will look different depending on the size of your panel options that you have chosen. But this brings up my black and white properties panel. I'll click on the target adjustment tool here, and I can click anywhere in the image and adjust those tones. So I'm going to choose this tone here, and I'm just going to darken the corner of this building a little bit. I'll come down into the grass, and I can now lighten or darken this grass, and I can do the same here with my sky. So I've got all this adjustment that I can play with. I can further come back to my levels adjustment layer here, and I can further play around with these tweaks so I can give more of a shadow content. less highlight. And we could come in and move the gamma slider in the center here. However, that's often best left at default, and we rely on the blend mode to be able to change things around. Of course, we can also change the opacity to make that strength a little bit longer. Now, what's interesting here is the color layer. So it's only the color content that's coming through. And one great technique we can do here is to reduce the opacity of this color layer, so we can get this desaturated look, which can work really well if you're trying to create an old photograph effect. There's one more stage that we can do to this, and that is to come in and add a hue and saturation layer above the color layer and come down to this clipping icon. And this now makes this a clipping layer. So this hue and saturation adjustment will only affect the color content on this color layer. Picking up my target adjustment tool, and I can increase the saturation of that blue, and that's ridiculously strong, but I can desaturate some of that blue sky. I can come in here and I can desaturate this foreground area. So I'm getting quite a different appeal happening here too. I can click on the building and I can move that around, increase its saturation. Or if I hold down the Command or the Control key, you can see it starts to adjust the hue of that particular tone. So I can move this around almost infinitely. If I go too far, I can simply come up and type in 0 here to bring this back to normal. Again, I'll hold down the Command or the Control key and I can change the hue of these tones. After we have completed this stage, we would go through the process of sharpening our file, click on the top layer, Command-Option-Shift-E. And we've discussed sharpening in our previous two videos, so you should be able to do this by now. Rename as Sharpen. Convert to Smart Object. And Filter, Sharpen, Unsharp Mask. And I'll apply some sharpening to this file. After that's applied, using the old shortcut key of the Option or the Alt key and clicking on the eye icon, you can see dramatic changes to this file. In the next video, we will show you how to set up an action so that you can apply these layers to new files very quickly and very easily, and then all you have to do is modify. So make sure you watch the next lesson. Following that lesson, we will show you how to fine-tune the application of this special recipe that's applied to a number of different files.